What's going on, guys? Just having a little morning coffee here, thinking about a lot of things. First of all, RIP Duck, bro. I had to go to bed when I saw that shit at like 8 o'clock last night. I just went to bed, but that's not what I want to talk about. Real quick, I haven't put out an episode of Higher Learning, the podcast, in a couple weeks. I'm doing a lot of research right now, and I just want to I want to pass on correct knowledge. I want to make sure I'm fully aware of what I'm, putting out there. But I just want to put this out here for you, right? All right. So when we talk about Native Americans, we're looking at the red man, as they say. As they call us black men, they call them red men, right? But in your history books, they tell you that these so-called Native Americans came across a Bering Strait, right? They walked across the Bering Strait and got here to America. So if they walked across the Bering Strait to get to America, how are they Native Americans, right? That means they were originally somewhere else in Asia, and they walked across the Bering Strait to America, right? So that by definition, that means they're not Native Americans, okay? Secondly, you talk to the Native Americans. First of all, if I asked you what's the closest pyramid to your house, you're gonna tell me somewhere in Egypt, right? Wrong. There's pyramids all over Texas. There's pyramids all up the Mississippi River, right? But we don't learn about those in school. So if the so-called Native Americans, who y'all call Indians, are telling y'all that this is not theirs, they didn't build that. They tell y'all they didn't build that. They tell y'all that black men gave them the spear tips with the gold and the certain metallurgy that y'all track back to, African metallurgy during that time. If there was actually black explorers known to have been to America on expeditions 500 years before then. So basically my point is, if the so-called Native Americans came across the Bering Strait from Asia to America and found civilization here already of black people, why do they keep telling you you're from Africa? Now, let's not get it twisted. We know about the transatlantic slave trade, right? We know there were Africans brought over. But what they don't tell you is that black people were already here. All right. Now, this is the part where I say I would rather, do a full podcast so I can put out all the research and everything like that, because this sounds like some type of, drastic claim, but it's really not, because the information is, right there. Like Christopher Columbus tells you about things that he gets from the so-called Native Americans that were from African people. If you look up American, just start there, look up American pyramids and look at the artifacts. And if they don't look African or black to you or so-called Negro to you, then I don't know what does. So my point is, the reason why they need you to believe that all black people in America came from Africa is because if you believe that you were from America originally, your family, your ancestors were from America, then that means you have a right to land. That means you have a claim to land. The same way that they, and look, check this out. The same way they do the reservations and all of that shit, like the land for the, so-called Native Americans, who they tell us in their own history that they're not truly Native. They would have to do that for everybody that can prove that their family did not come over here on slave ships. That's why they're the records, a certain point in every courthouse records, you get to the 1800s, the 1830, you get to a certain point and they all had a courthouse fire. Why is that? Why are all these records have they disappeared? Think about that. Think about that for a second. Think about the classifications of so-called black people. A lot of people don't realize at one point we were considered copper color indigenous people. Now, what does indigenous mean? First of all, I mean, hello, like the answers are all right in our face. So I'm not saying that a lot of our ancestors didn't come from Africa. I'm not saying that wasn't the case, because we know that is. But we also know on Christopher Columbus's initial expedition. Now, check this out. We know Christopher Columbus sailed in 1492, right? But then when he went back, we know he took a boatload of indigenous slaves with him, okay? Now, at this point, once he reached Africa, once he reached Spain and came back, these same slaves he brought with him were sometimes transported back to America as African slaves. I mean, it is what it is. So my thing is, if you can mistake a so-called Native American slave or an indigenous American slave for an African slave, what does that tell you? You know? On top of that, research, look up scientists or archaeologists, look up archaeologists find piece of Africa in Alabama. Now that takes you back to Pangea. And I'm really finna get off here because I'm outside enjoying coffee, hot coffee in this hot weather. I don't know what I was thinking, but you know. It all points to Pangea. Remember Pangea when all this shit was one continent, right? So the fact that they're finding pieces of Africa in America should just tell you the whole story, right? Or did you think that Africans, you know, before the continents were split, Africans just stopped at this invisible line and you didn't think they were all over the planet? But this is just something to think about, guys. Basically, like I said, I'm gonna be putting out a whole episode, but I know those episodes be an hour and a half, 2 hours long. A lot of y'all don't have time for that all the time, you know, so I just wanted to put like a short little clip out real quick and get y'all thinking, you know, because everything for the most part that we've been taught is either a lie or a half truth, and it serves purpose as to why they need us to believe what they want us to believe. But yeah, man, I'm out here sweating, so I'm gonna call it a day on that note and get back to this research so I can put out a full episode for y'all.